Lights are still on, but officially, it's day 3 of the government shutdown.
This shutdown was a political miscalculation of gargantuan proportions.
Americans know why the dysfunction is occurring. A dysfunctional president.
The fact that liberals have to continue to lie about this is really troubling.
I want you to know that your commander-in-chief and all of the American people are behind you 100%. And nothing that happens in our nation's capital will ever change that.
Shocking revelations involving the FBI's handling of its investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server. FBI agent Peter Strzok and FBI lawyer Lisa Page knew Hillary Clinton would not face any charges.
Can you imagine if one of us did that? People either need to be terminated or prosecuted, depending on how deep that is.
They did it! Bill Belichick, New England, Tom Brady, and the run by Dion Lewis. Touchdown, Alshon Jeffrey. Super Bowl 52 in 2 weeks.
The only person who got hit harder than Rob Gronkowski, that guy and that pole.
Poor guy.
Oh my goodness! I'm surprised the whole ceiling didn't come down.
So, and he's an Eagles fan. He runs, he hits the poles. All the Patriots fans on the subway probably are cheering.
Right.
But my gosh, I'm sorry. If the train is already going, you shouldn't chase after it because it's not going to stop.
The train had left the station,
Right,
but you know what?
literally.
He had to get home, and at least wearing the jersey. His team won.
All right,
Poor
now,
guy.
and now, by the way, the Eagles are off to Minneapolis. They're in the Super Bowl. That's where Jillian is. She's reflecting on that game. And we know the New England Patriots are going back again, and they had to come back to get there
Now,
again.
Jillian said, if we lose, I'll wear the Minnesota jersey on air. Pete said, all right, I'll wear the Vikings jersey on air. And when is that going to take place? Do our producers know? When are we going to do that? This weekend, maybe?
Sooner than later.
Maybe Super Bowl weekend?
As soon as we get them both on back at work.
That's
we
right.
can't get these guys back at work.
Because of the game they took off.
All right, so let's
Speaking
talk
of
about
taking
people
off.
that are not at work, and that is our government.
Exactly. You are looking at day 3, the government shutdown. What is supposed to happen is apparently the Senate's going to take a vote today at noon. Mitch McConnell had suggested last night, let's have a vote at 10 p.m. Chuck Schumer said no. Now, here's the important thing, is Mitch McConnell says if they agree to reopen the government and fund the government, they will take action, the Republicans in the Senate, on DACA by February the 8th. So, in other words, go ahead, pass this funding bill, and the Senate will take this thing up within the next 3 weeks. That is a major concession because they had not said that before. Now it looks like he's ready to deal. The big question is, will the Democrats, or they just want to play politics?
Well, they were supposed to vote yesterday. Democrats had a chance to vote yesterday, and then Chuck Schumer said, hold on, we need to chew on this a little bit. We need to think this through, so let's vote on Monday. Meanwhile, Monday's the first work day. People are furloughed now.
Right, so they're not working. The Washington Post says the deal that Steve just outlined, the Democrats are unlikely to take. The other thing is, if they do take it up on the deal, does anyone think that they're going to get together in the next 3 weeks and agree on chain migration, on the lottery system, and on funding for the wall in exchange for DACA? And what is DACA going to look like? Is it going to say, okay, kids, it wasn't your fault. You came here at 2 and 3 years old. You're in your 20s now. You could stay, barring these circumstances. But what about their parents? The Democrats want their parents in.
Well,
they look at them as voters. Personally, in the big picture, if Donald Trump's president and these 800,000 become citizens, and people say it's more like 2 million, I think that President Trump is going to get credit for it in the Hispanic community. I don't think Democrats naturally can say these are my voters.
Well, the Democrats are turning this into an emergency. They're trying to tack it on to this funding bill. It's a funding bill. The president made it very clear, 5 months ago, he said, you've got till March. Congress, do something. But, you know, Congress is completely dysfunctional. Kellyanne Conway was with us from the North Lawn of the White House just about a half an hour ago. And she says that the Democrats are just trying to play the blame game while innocent people, in her estimation, are getting hurt.
The president is not the one introducing the immigration issue, getting in the way of our military spouses getting their checks this week, this month. The president is open to negotiating on immigration and getting a bill passed after the Democrats reopen the government. They shut down the government for an unrelated issue, and this is on them. And I have to say, this ridiculous question of who's to blame, you got to see who's suffering. These are unintended consequences for people who really do rely upon federal workers who rely upon their paycheck, people who rely upon their benefits.
You're mad about this? You know who's really mad about it? The illegals who did it, the legals who did it the right way, such as Stuart Varney. He was a Brit, now he's an American, said he had to go through the whole process.
Had to have a physical?
Had to have a physical. Infuriates
Background check.
Right, and take the test, study, do all of that. He said what infuriates him is that people who didn't do it the right way, they're the ones that the Democrats are in favor of right now, instead of those who did do it the right way like he did. Listen.
I am royally annoyed as a legal immigrant who spent a lot of time waiting online, filling out forms, getting police reports from everywhere in the world. I had to go through all of that to get here, and now my legal government is being shut down in the interests of people who are here illegally. I'm royally annoyed at that kind of thing.
Well, we're going to have to, we're going to see what happens. Although 70% of the American public stated that they're for a pathway for citizenship for these DACA people. However, is it in exchange for shutting down the government? No. If Republicans message correctly and accurately, and they say there's only one reason why 800,000 people have to have their situation addressed, or else we can't fund the government, military doesn't get paid, the post office can't go to work, the TSA is working for free for now. I think the polls will be a lot different.
Well, I tell you what, we had Molly Hemingway on with us at 6:30 Eastern time this morning, and she said, given the messaging that the Republicans are doing right now, you know, the Democrats closed down the government essentially for 800,000 people who are in the country illegally. She said, wait until those political ads come out next campaign season. That would be devastating to the Democrats, who, by the way, Democrats feel they've got the upper hand. And again, the White House feels they're winning. Nonetheless, when you look at the whole debate regarding immigration and people who are in the country illegally, you know, clearly the Democrats have one point of view today that actually is a 180 from where it was just a couple of years ago. Listen to this.
It is wrong and ultimately self-defeating for a nation of immigrants to permit the kind of abuse of our immigration laws we have seen in recent years, and we must do more to stop it.
We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked.
We do not want to do anything to encourage more illegal immigration into this country.
The American people are fundamentally pro-legal immigration and anti-illegal immigration. We will only pass comprehensive reform when we recognize this fundamental concept.
So both sides are going to have their conference call around 11 o'clock today, at which time they hope to get on the same page. In the backdrop is some drama that about 25 so-called Democrats and Republicans got together, from Senator Coons to Senator Flake and Senator Graham and Senator Lamar Alexander. About 25 in all have been getting together, meeting to maybe present some type of immigration reform with DACA, and meeting again today. I don't know if that's going to be part of the conference, but the leadership was brought in. I thought Rand Paul made the most sense. He says, let's just put it in writing that after you pass this budget, this continuing resolutions, which is ridiculous, they got to pass a 2-year budget, then just put in writing that we're going to take up right away immigration by March 6th. And he goes, that should not be a problem.
Well, also keep in mind, whatever the Senate passes regarding immigration and the Dreamers, it's not a done deal in the U.S. House of Representatives. There's a real good possibility, if it's not strict enough, the Republicans won't vote for it.
It's so political. Democrats are saying DACA. Really, Republicans, all the Republicans that we've interviewed say that they're going to vote to keep all of these kids here in the country. They came over. Their parents, came here illegally, but they're not going to penalize them. They have a heart.
But what circumstances inside DACA? It's not, okay, you're citizens tomorrow. No, you're on the path.
Right.
And your parents should not be.
You're on the path, and we're going to vet you and make sure you're making the correct decisions and you're not a criminal. Now, Dan Bongino, who came here the right way, or his family came here the right way, we've all heard the story of his mother-in-law not being able to feed her kids. She didn't take government money. She would hear her baby's stomachs growling at night, and she was so upset, but she refused to take.
All sleeping in the same bed.
Exactly. So we interviewed him earlier, and he was saying exactly with those sound bites, that montage that you saw, how hypocritical the Democrats are, because they said one thing a few years ago, now they're changing their tune just to go against this president. Listen.
The Democrats are hypocrites on something. Here, let me give you my shock face. I mean, this is incredible. Of course, we're going to defend the fact that we need competent, talented people who add to the economic productivity of the United States to come into the country and produce wealth here. Legal immigration is not an issue when done the right way and done in a labor-sensitive way. But defending people coming here illegally, basically saying, you know what, those rules don't matter and don't apply to me. I mean, why are the Democrats doing it? It's really simple. They have nothing else to run on. They are in an intellectual vacuum of ideas right now.
It's all about the messaging, and the President of the United States is trying to get ahead of the messaging. He'd like to win this blame game. He just tweeted out 2 minutes ago, the Democrats are turning down services and security for citizens in favor of services and security for non-citizens. Not good.
Meanwhile, the shutdown is already prompting cancellation of training for reserve units. Mattis says that he's released citizens from their duties at the Pentagon. I guess they're going to be furloughed temporarily. They face a variety of consequences up and down, and temporarily our troops are not going to get paid.
Well, let's see if they can.
They still have to go to their missions,
today.
but they're going to cut back on training.
It's ridiculous. All right, let's talk about some more headlines for you today, starting with this, a Fox News alert. A manhunt now underway for whoever set off the 2 pipe bombs inside a mall down in Florida. The devices were found inside a service corridor, causing damage to the ceiling and to the walls, but thankfully no one was hurt. A suspect was seen running from the mall. It happened in Lake Wales, which is south of Orlando. Cops not calling this an act of terror. Also breaking right now, Vice President Mike Pence addressing Israel's national legislature in Jerusalem. This is live, I'm being told. The vice president announcing the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem will open next year ahead of schedule. This marks the highest level U.S. visit to the region since the White House made the announcement. And the man who plotted to kill American soldiers in the name of ISIS will learn his fate today. The convicted terrorist will be sentenced after a short delay by a federal judge in Ohio for a plot to kill soldiers at a U.S. military base execution style. Prosecutors say he trained with the terror group in Syria before hoping to carry out the deadly attack 2 years ago. He faces up to 23 years in prison. And those are your headlines.
Let's see what the sentence is. All right, thank you.
All right, coming up straight ahead in the next 55 minutes, brand new text messages from that anti-Trump FBI agent just revealed. It turns out he knew exactly how the Hillary Clinton email probe would end. And what happened to the other text messages? The FBI says they lost them.
Little fishy. Plus, Vice President Mike Pence slamming Democrats for playing politics with our military during the shutdown. What does this message send to our troops? Military panel to discuss straight ahead from the USA. Well, the FBI on Friday released 384 new pages of text messages between those 2 lovebirds over at the FBI, Peter Strzok, screen left, and Lisa Page, screen right. Now, here's the thing. They look pretty bad for he and her. However, what looks really worse than that is the fact that now the FBI is saying, we can't find 5 months worth of their text messages, including, the time period when that insurance policy would have happened, when the president was elected. All that stuff, they say, is missing because there was a software problem with the Samsung Galaxy 5 phone.
So seems a little fishy. 5 months worth of missing text messages.
Little convenient.
Yeah, the chairman of Homeland Security, Ron Johnson, wrote a letter and got this response back from the FBI that we must 5 months of exchanges between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. The disclosure made Friday in this letter. The department wants to bring your attention that the FBI's technical system for retaining the text messages sent and received by mobile devices failed to preserve those messages. Now, if the FBI was investigating any of us, and we came back to the FBI and we said, yeah, the system we were working on, it failed to retain. Would that be okay when being that there was no disclosure of this prior to the request? Let alone the ones that were retained really raised a lot of people's antennas.
Is it the FBI that's saying we lost the text messages? messages, we can't find it, so it's different than what you just mapped out. Because you're saying these two lovers are saying we don't have them anymore.
No, I didn't say that. I'm saying that if the roles were reversed, the FBI was investigating us, and we said, sorry, my system failed to retain just these 5 months, that would be a little bit of a problem when they were told they had to retain them.
And there's some question whether or not the FBI asked those two, hey, can we have your non-FBI devices? Because there's been a suggestion they were using iMessaging. But when you look at some of the messages they did release, not good for these two. Listen to this. On July 1st, Strzok says, timing looks like hell. And Page says, yeah, that is awful timing. And then she says, it's a real profile in courage since she, Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General, knows no charges will be brought. Well, how would they know that before? They're at the FBI. So how would they know how the Attorney General was going to rule before that? We had Congressman Dave Joyce. He's been very troubled by all this, and he says everybody should be held accountable, and heads could roll.
25 years I've been in law enforcement before I got here in 2013, and I can tell you that I read it twice just to make sure I read it properly, and it was deeply disturbing. The Constitution protects everybody, even President Trump. He didn't give up his rights when he became president, and so we need to make sure that the documents are accessible to everyone so they can understand whether it's President Trump or the everyday guy in the street, the Constitution applies to us all and should be everyone who has anything to do with it should be held accountable.
So that congressman was talking about the FISA memo that was written that outlines some of the disturbing things about what might have been happening with the Obama administration and the Trump campaign. That really wasn't referring to the text messages.
Yeah, Devin Nunes has that memo. Many people are calling for it to be released so that we can all figure out or find out what the details are.
But just real quick on the end of just to close up the text messages situation, the FBI explanation that there was technical problems is not sufficient and must show concrete ways that the missing texts are not an obstruction of congressional oversight. That is according to Senator Ron Johnson. He is not accepting this.
Just bizarre that they have some of the text messages, but yet they happen to lose 5 months of them.
Isn't that convenient? Meanwhile, straight ahead, 8:20 here in New York City, House Speaker Paul Ryan joins us live with the latest on the shutdown negotiations from Capitol Hill. We got lots of questions. He's got lots of answers.
It was definitely an unforgettable experience. Well done. Well done.
Well, there you see newly appointed U.S. ambassador to Russia taking the polar plunge. John Huntsman dunking under frigid water in Moscow to mark the Epiphany. Oh, man.
The Orthodox Christian tradition commemorates the baptism of Jesus. This is Fox and Friends weekend co-host Abby Huntsman's dad.
I'm pretty sure it was hotter in the Middle East when Jesus was baptized, but we'll get more on that later. On a different note, let's talk about something easier, and that would be passing a budget in America. And let's bring in the Speaker, Paul Ryan, to react. Mr. Speaker, as you know, you guys did what you were supposed to do, and then over the weekend, all the dramas around the Senate. But you are tapped into what's going on the other side. So we heard about a meeting today at about 11 o'clock at a conference call, and last night there would be no vote at 1 in the morning. It was put off until today at noon. What's the latest you could tell us?
That's it right there, Brian, which is the Democrats will have a chance to open the government that they shut down at noon today. If they open the government at noon, the House will pass this bill. It says instead of having the government spending bill go to February the 16th, it would go to February the 8th. We've agreed to that change in date. And look, children's health insurance, that dries up. You're seeing furloughed workers across America today. You're seeing troops not getting their pay, Border Patrol not getting their pay, law enforcement, national parks. I can go on and on and on. This is totally pointless and needless. Senate Democrats did this. Senate Democrats are the ones who can stop this, and that's at noon today.
So, Mr. Speaker, the Republicans are dug in. There will be no DACA in this deal. But the Democrats are dug in, too, because they want DACA in it because they feel they've got maximum leverage right now. So somebody's going to have to budge.
So, Steve, this is what's so weird about this issue. We were in bipartisan, earnest, good faith DACA negotiations before this government shutdown. So I would maybe sort of understand these moves if we were saying, we just want to deport all these kids. We don't want to do anything to solve DACA.
Exactly.
We don't want anything.
Yeah.
And that's not what we are saying. We are for fixing this problem. As you know, we want to make sure that we fix it more comprehensively so we don't have another DACA problem in a few years. That's the point. But That's what's bizarre to me, because we had bipartisan negotiations between the House and the Senate, Republicans and Democrats, already taking place, and they still shut the government down. Let me just read you a couple quotes from the 2013 government shutdown.
Okay.
Open the government. When you open the government, we'll open negotiations. Dick Durbin, 2013. Or this: I believe in immigration reform. What if I persuaded my caucus to say, I'm going to shut down the government, I'm not going to pay our bills unless I get my way? It's a politics of idiocy, confrontation, and paralysis. Chuck Schumer, 2013.
Yeah.
This is just ridiculous. So I don't think they knew what they were getting themselves into. I'm not really sure. And what we're saying is open the government, and then we'll get back to these negotiations we were already underway that they blew up when they shut the government down.
They're making it about politics instead of thinking about what's best for the citizens in this country. If you flip over to other networks, I'm seeing them saying things like, oh, this is the president's fault. This is Republicans' fault because Republicans have the House and Republicans have the Senate. They're not saying that they need the 60 votes. What's your reaction to that?
That's it right there, Ainsley. I think they're counting on confusion. They're counting on people sort of casually paying attention and, oh, well, the president's a Republican, the House is controlled by Republicans, the Senate is marginally controlled by Republicans, when what is really the fact is they're using the filibuster to shut down the government. So a minority in the Senate Democrats, are using their filibuster to shut down the government. Let me say it really clearly, and we saw this last night at about midnight. We know that there are enough votes to open the government. If it actually came to a vote, there would be more than 50 votes to open the government back up. But the Senate Democrats are using their filibuster, making it 60 votes and shutting down the government. And here's what's so weird about this, Ainsley, is the bill that we passed in the House, they support it. They don't oppose the underlying legislation. That's what's so weird about this.
Well, I'll tell you, some of the scariest words you could ever hear, Paul Ryan, is the president's just tweeted. So I'm going to have to fill in the gap for you. Here we go. He just tweeted this out while you were speaking. Democrats have shut down our government in the interests of their far-left base. They don't want to do it. They don't want to do it, but are powerless. So he's saying Senator Schumer's being held hostage by his far-left base. But looking for a way out of this. Rand Paul brought up yesterday, what if we put in writing that we're going to get to this by February 6th? Can you go back to negotiate, pass this budget, go back to negotiate there? Would you guys be okay with that?
You know what I've been saying all along? Open the government, then we'll start negotiating. Right. Open the government, then we'll resume negotiations. It's just that clear. It's just that simple. Look, we were negotiating before when they shut the government down. That's what's so weird about all of this stuff.
You know what's frustrating for the American people? Y'all, like you've been saying, you both are on the same page. If you look back at 2013, I think it was, all these Democrats said they want to put up the fence, they want to put up the wall. What's the big deal? Put up the wall. It's keeping drugs out of our country, keeping criminals out, letting just the people who are the good ones come in. What's wrong with that? And then that way they get DACA. Republicans have come on our show time and time again saying, we're not going to not give you DACA. These are kids that were brought in by their parents. We're not going to send them to a random country that they know nothing about.
That's exactly what we're saying, Ainsley. And so, and here's the key point I keep trying to make to people, which is, okay, we do DACA, which we, just like you say, we want to do that. We don't want to kick kids out. We don't want to deport kids to countries they don't know. But when we do that, we don't want to say to people in other countries, oh, get yourself to America illegally, because sooner or later you'll get legalized. Right. We need to make sure that we control immigration. We need to make sure that we actually, in doing this, are securing our borders, are fixing our immigration laws, so that we don't have another 700,000 kids in 5 years where we have another DACA mess on our hands. That's the point. The root cause of this DACA problem is uncontrolled borders, a broken immigration system. Right. The symptom of that problem is DACA. So while we fix the symptom, let's address the root cause. That's pure common sense. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's what the negotiations were discussing before the Democrats shut down the government.
And you passed a bill, and it went by, you just need a simple majority there in the House. But then it goes to the Senate, where they got the crazy rules where you got to have 60.
That's right.
I know the president over the weekend tweeted out, maybe it's time to pull the nuclear option. Sitting in the House of Representatives looking at how the Senate operates, that shows you the dysfunction right now, because you've got to get that every time. Otherwise, nothing budges.
Yeah, look, ask anybody in the House and they will complain to you about filibusters. We're a majoritarian body. We get 50+1% and we pass legislation. We obviously that's how we got the tax bill done, because we use this tool called reconciliation, which blocks filibusters. And so, we've got hundreds of bills sitting in the Senate that haven't been passed because Chuck Schumer has been using the filibuster. Just so you know, the House, we passed every single appropriation bill last September. So all this talk about having multiple continuing resolutions, the House passed did its job, passed our spending bills last September, and Chuck Schumer's been filibustering those bills as well.
And you know the country's hurting every time you do a CR because we can't budget, especially the military.
True.
And you know dollars and cents as well as anyone.
And the House passed the military funding bill for an entire year twice already, and Chuck Schumer's been filibustering that as well.
All right, Speaker, it's going to be a busy day. A lot of sleepless hours. Thanks a lot, Speaker Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
All right, straight ahead on this Monday, Vice President Mike Pence slamming Democrats for playing politics with our service members.
You and your family shouldn't have to worry for 1 minute about whether you're going to get paid as you serve in the uniform of the United States.
What does this message mean to our troops? Our military panel here to discuss next.
Minority in the Senate has decided to play politics with military pay. But you deserve better. Your president, your vice president, and the American people are not going to put up with it. We're going to demand that they reopen the government. In fact, we're not going to reopen negotiations on illegal immigration until they reopen the government and give you, our soldiers, and your families the benefits and wages you've earned.
Well, that's the Vice President Mike Pence blasting Democrats for playing politics with our nation's military as the federal government goes into day 3 of a shutdown mode. And, of course, he's doing that overseas. It's embarrassing. Pence also reassuring our brave men and women overseas that the Trump administration is on their side. So what does his message mean for our military? Here to weigh in, let's meet our panel. Former NYPD Lieutenant Army veteran Dr. Darren Porcher's here. Armed Forces veteran serving 10 years in the reserves, Kathy Barnett is here. Retired Marine Corps Captain and Vice President of Operations at Self-Made, Katie Horgan, and retired Army Captain Connor Crehan is here. Connor, let's start with you. First off, this shutdown is meaning that the men and women have to continue to serve. Their pay is delayed. What's that like?
That's pretty disheartening when you think about it, because no matter what, the bad guys aren't going to stop coming, and you still have to get up every morning and go do your job. So when you think about the government not being able to get themselves in order to get yourself paid, it's very disheartening.
They're also cancellation, Katie, canceling and delaying training for reserve units. Does that matter?
Yes, it absolutely matters. And I think Vice President Pence in his speech made it very clear that the architects of this shutdown have shown a callous disregard for the U.S. military, active in reserves. It impacts our military readiness. And the underlying issue here for me is the use of a shutdown as a negotiating tool. It's not a negotiating tool. We pay lawmakers to come to a compromise to act in the best interest of American people. And that's not happening. And that, to me, signals that we have a problem with our system. It's a broken system, that there's a lack of accountability and a misalignment of incentives. How is it possible that this can happen without consequence?
You know, remember last time, Kathy, that John Boehner came out and he basically was held hostage by Ted Cruz and company saying cancel Obamacare. Well, President Obama's never going to cancel Obamacare.
Of course.
The government shut down. It had nothing to do with the budget. This, again, is something that has nothing to do with the budget.
It has nothing to do with the budget. There's no imminent reason for immigration to even be a part of the funding in this round. So this is squarely a Schumer shutdown. Democrats own this one right here. But we have men and women who are out there putting their lives on the line. We have families who are being told to trust their governments, to do what is right, to bring their loved ones back home to them. And what are we seeing? Democrats politicking for electoral votes. I think it's very important for Americans to realize that when we have Democrats trying to resist the president, or when we have the media trying to shame the president or make it harder for the president, what they're really doing is resisting us, the American people. Who they're really making it harder for is us, the American people, specifically the military. According to VA records, veterans' poverty rate is on the increase. The number of veterans who are on food stamps is far outpacing those who are not a part of the military. So I think the least we can do is make sure that they're getting paid, make sure that we're taking care of their needs over the needs of people who aren't even citizens.
It would be good if they served the military, and the budget did. You know, in fact, Chuck Schumer said we gave the president more money for the military than he even requested, but right now we can't get to it, Darren.
I think it's a real problem. One of the things that people are not taking into consideration, the average private in the military, in the Army, doesn't make a lot of money. And these people live in the barracks and they have to support themselves, so they're really in a tough position. And then when we look at the exponential threats that are facing this nation from places like China, Russia, and North Korea, it's incumbent upon Congress to elicit these funds for us as a military. So when we move forward, we have to look towards someone like Chuck Schumer, and he's guilty in the court of he's guilty in the court of formal turpitude, because this issue is impacting not just on the military, but us on the nation as a whole.
That's true, Connor, but a lot of people say, hey, the president always said, you know, if you put me in charge, I'll make sure this happens. I'll put everyone in the room. So far, if you believe the New York Times, they told him, well, handle this, Mr. President. You know, don't get involved right now. What's your reaction to people say the president should get more directly involved?
I think it's important to have leadership at the top that supports everyone underneath him in his command. And as the commander-in-chief, it's his duty to get involved. So I fully support...
You want him in there?
Absolutely. And I fully support what Vice President Pence said about himself and the president supporting the military. And I think it's important to remember that they do, in fact, care about the military and our veterans, and they need to get more involved.
Katie, it's unbelievable. The lawmakers who have the shutdown still get paid.
Yeah, that is just unconscionable to me. If they're not doing their jobs, which is what's happening, I mean, this budget process is about anything but the budget at this point. It's become a vehicle for partisan squabbles. So if they're not able to get their job done, then they shouldn't be paid.
And Kathy, here's what bothers me. We're trying to invest in missile defense. We're trying to find out where our aircraft carriers are going to go and how many we should build. You can't do that month to month. We're dealing with a month-to-month budget instead of a 2-year budget. You can't plan.
We all know that it takes 60 votes in order to pass legislation in the Senate. So once again, the narrative is that it's Donald Trump's fault. But what else can he do? Everything that Democrats wanted, whether it's with the chip or any of the other measures, they are in this particular funding. There is nothing that they oppose about it. But like General Mattis said, China and Russia has now replaced terrorism as the #1 threat to our national security. So to your point, we can't go month to month trying to figure out a strategy against China and Russia.
All right, and Darren, how does this play out in the long run?
North Korea has launched 2 different missiles over Japan. Japan is now conducting weapons drills drills for their citizens in Tokyo. We don't have the logistics to support this. And when we look at these, this shutdown, for example, it's of detriment that we get these funds to ensure that we have the logistics in place to protect these citizens abroad.
And after we saw what happened in Hawaii, it doesn't look like many states are prepared for an emergency event after the cataclysmic event.
38 minutes.
If that was real.
Unbelievable. Thanks so much for your service, and hopefully we'll be talking about what you're going to be doing with the 2-year budget soon in the military. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Brian.
All right, still ahead in the next 19 minutes. The minimum wage has increased in 12 states this year. It may be good news for some workers, but one restaurant owner says it's a dangerous trend that will end up hurting more than helping. He'll explain. Plus, millennials say growing up is hard. A new study shows that adulthood now begins at 24. Kevin Jackson, who is an adult, will be joining us.
People used to say you became an adult when you turned 18, but not anymore.
Is this your place? No, I live with my mom. Oh. Yeah. You hungry? Hey, Ma! Can we get some meatloaf?
Well, a new study claims adulthood now begins at the age of 24.
I love that movie. But our next guest has a reality check for those late bloomers. Joining us now is radio talk show host and executive director of the Black Sphere, Kevin Jackson. Kevin, great to see you.
You too, Ainsley. You and Steve as well.
Thank you. What do you think about this? So it used to be adolescence ended at 19, and now they're saying, according to the study, 24.
You know this is a liberal-sponsored report, because who doesn't want to grow up, get out of the mom and dad, into the clutches of mom and dad, and start adulthood? I mean, I wanted to leave the house at 12, not because it was a bad situation, but because I wanted to go find my life. Holy cow. I mean, and I was thinking about this because it's such a deep subject. It seems like we're having fun with it, but it's such a deep subject because we now have the Democrats and the leftists who want to infantilize America. They want people to be at home for Obamacare. You can be covered until you're 26. Quite frankly, liberals never grow up. They're still children, as we've seen with some of the things you guys have been talking about all morning with some of these various issues where you're just shaking your head going, seriously, DACA and illegal immigration? So they don't want to grow up. And then when you start looking at it from the black perspective, where we've got people that are grandparents at the age of 30, 32 years old, you know, what is it? Look, I was going to say MAGA doesn't stand for Make America Great Again. It stands for Make America Grown Again. I'm so glad Donald Trump was able to become president and say, put on your big boy pants, America. It's time that we grow up.
Well, it's interesting, Kevin, that they should move the goalposts as to when you become an adult, because you look at the statistics, people are actually, puberty is actually ending earlier. So you would think it's going the other direction. People are growing up faster, but that's not the reality, is it?
Well, I'll tell you this, Steve. If you said, hey, millennials can't vote until they're 26 years old or something like that, you would definitely see these guys changing their minds about this. Look, if they want to make children, because the way I look at this is, the more you infantilize somebody, essentially you're saying you need our help. So you look at society and they're saying, no, all these guys are infants until they're 20, into their 20s and into their 30s and things like this. And they've got an entire culture, and I'll use blacks again, that make us believe that we are at the behest of the government. You know, unless the government's there to play adult, how are you going to survive, Kevin? So look, again, it's a complicated issue. We can poke a little bit of fun at it, but at the end of the day, we have to get people out of the house, grown up, and instead of telling kids that you can be 24, 25 years old before you find adulthood, we should be making them into young men and women much earlier.
Kevin, I know you had a reality check at a very early age. Tell us about your story and what all of us who are trying to raise kids, what we need to do to prevent our kids from staying at home at 24.
I mean, look, well, I can tell you from my perspective, I was raised by my grandparents. It was very simple. At 18 years old, you're an adult. You're leaving the house. You come back to vacation. You don't come back to live. So, come back and see us. If you have kids, we want to see our great grandkids in my case. But no, you were gone. And quite frankly, that was sort of the coming of age was a big deal for, at least for me and people in my family. And quite frankly, the generation I came up in, we couldn't wait to get to be 16 to drive. We couldn't wait to be 18 so we could have our freedom. And at some points, it was 21. Because I could drink, or 22, I was going to graduate from college. Now all these things are just melting into, hey, be a kid until you're 40 years old, stay in mom and dad's basement. And I think it's a showcase of how liberalism has taken over America. I don't want to make it too political, but I really believe that liberalism's taken over America and says, be a kid as long as you want to be a kid. No, how about you enter the real world, put on your big boy pants, and become an adult?
I think we also need to remember we're training our kids not only to help them in the future, but help their spouses, too. If we want them to be good husbands, good wives, we have to teach them to take care of the family and that kind of thing. So,
yeah, there's lots of lessons. Absolutely, lots of lessons.
All right. Kevin Jackson joining us today. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
Coming up next, the minimum wage is increasing in 12 states this year. It might be good news for workers, but one restaurant owner says it is a dangerous trend, and his warning for you next.
Hey, Bill Hemmer, what's happening in 9 minutes?
I see you. Your government's at work. Can't you see? Can't you tell? Morning, is there a breakthrough? Mick Mulvaney from the White House will answer that live in a matter of minutes. Also, we have a great lineup. The very latest from over the weekend, what's happening today. The Senate reconvenes in about 2 hours. We've got all that. Senator Marco Rubio on what can get it done. Sarah Sanders on what the president's doing today. So a big 2 hours. Come and join Sandra and me. We kick it off in 10 minutes. A surprise also coming up at 9:50 Eastern Time. Stay tuned for that. Details in a moment.